Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was a player of League of Legends. Meet Naruto Uzumaki, a not-so-regular teen with a passion for the MOBA game League of Legends even though he sucked at it. His life was normal until he was introduced to the supernatural world and found out he had an irregular sacred gear. So, the problem? How should he fend off Amano Yuuma? With Lucian's relic pistols? There are so many choices. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 10. Never summon me again, or I will bring destruction down upon your world. The first thing Naruto felt upon becoming self-aware once again was the deep booming and full of mockery voice of the Star Forger, and for a brief second, it felt like he was floating in total darkness, and then he saw light, and soon found himself looking directly at the celestial dragon that was called Aurelian Soul by the aspects of Mount Targon. And then the blonde woke up to find himself lying on his back. At first, he could see anything because of his blurry vision, but after a few seconds or so of blinking repeatedly, he could see a ceiling above him, dark red in color, and the bed was too soft and comfortable to be something in a hospital or even an infirmary. When Naruto glanced to the side, he realized that he was in a bedroom, a rather luxurious one at that. A frown grew on his face. He wondered how he got here. Someone must have dragged him here after he lost consciousness. The last thing he remembered was Rias' bluish-green eyes as she flew toward him with tears of happiness in her eyes. They won, didn't they? If summoning Aurelian Soul to scare Razor off, then Naruto had no idea what else would bring them to victory. However, if they had truly won, then that meant his master was freed from the marriage engagement with that douchebag of a man, Razor Phoenix. Naruto was happy for her. Now his master could choose whoever she wanted to fall in love with and a future for herself. Ah, it looks like you're awake, Naruto-sama. The blonde then heard a familiar voice, and turned his head to see a certain silver-haired maid walking into the room with some fresh flowers in her hands. Graffia-san. The blonde greeted the woman as he sat up and realized that he was wearing a different outfit, a pajama of some sort that was dark red in color and felt like it was made of silk, as Graffia Lucifuge walked to the table beside his bed and changed the flowers in a crystal vase. Where am I? You're currently staying at a guest room of Gremory residence. Graffia informed him. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask me, Naruto-sama. Are you thirsty? Why yeah, thanks. But why are you calling me Naruto-sama, if you don't mind me asking? He asked, looking at her in confusion. You don't like it? Graffia asked as she poured him a glass of water. Anyone who can single-handedly defeat a high-class devil, summon and wield the power of a nine-tailed gumiho, a true phoenix, and a celestial god dragon, is worthy of my respect. You know Ari is a gumiho? And Aurelian Soul is a celestial god dragon? Naruto asked in surprise, remembering her words earlier. So far, everyone he had met who didn't know about League of Legends always referred to Ari as a Kyubi, nine-tailed demon foxes of Japanese folklore, one of whom was actually the leader of the West Yukai faction, whose power was said to be on par with an ultimate-class devil, while in truth Ari's basic concept was a gumiho, a demon fox creature that appeared in the folktales and legends of Korea, making Ari Korean. After your showcase of power in the raiding game match against Razor Phoenix-sama, Rias Oju-sama has to give her brother and the devil higher UPS a clear reports of your power. To tell you the truth, you summoning a true phoenix was worrisome enough for some devils, but a celestial dragon like the Star Forger himself, it was a terrifying sight for those who were watching. Even I was lost for words. It's unlike anything I have seen before in my life. Naruto could only let out a forced chuckle at that, but he wasn't surprised. When we found out that your power came from your knowledge of an online video game called League of Legends, I have done some researches myself and learnt about your summons, or champions. I see, hope it didn't cause Bucho too much trouble. Naruto nodded his head in understanding before asking, where is she, by the way? I have taken Rias Oju-sama to her room to rest. Graffia answered with a smile as she handed him a glass of water. She has been using her demonic power to refill your own reserve and quicken your recovery rate the past few days. Naruto choked, hitting his chest a few times as he lowered the glass of water down to ask the silver-haired woman, "Wait, the past few days? Graffia-san, how long was I out?" Not that he wasn't grateful for his master, who had taken care of him to the point she had to be taken to her room to rest, but his mind was entirely occupied by the fact that he was out for a few days. He had known that he would use a ton of demonic power in order to manifest Aurelian's soul to the world, but did he really deplete everything that he had at the time? For days, Naruto-sama. His fingers almost slipped from the glass of water in his hand. For day. He was out for 4 days just from summoning Aurelian's soul, who wasn't even at full power because of the crown he was wearing, for like half a minute. And that was after he had promoted himself to queen, as well, to gain a tremendous boost in demonic power. Never summon you again? Very well, you overgrown space dog, your demand is accepted. Naruto thought in his mind, hoping that the Star Forger could hear him even though he had not established a telepathic link between the two of them yet, not that he even wanted to. So, did I miss anything important? He then asked while scratching the back of his head. Oh, nothing you should be concerned about, just a party to celebrate Ojusama's first rating game victory against the genius Razor Phoenix and his peerage no less. Graffia answered obviously, we should have waited for you to wake up and get well first before holding this celebration party, as you are the one who was responsible for Phoenix-sama's defeat, but no one expected you to be out for so long and invitations has already been sent out, so the Gremory has no choice but to continue on with what they had planned. Naruto nodded his head in understanding. In all honesty, Naruto was actually feeling glad that he had missed the party, where there were no doubt that he would have to uncomfortably meet a lot of high-class devils. However, since the Lord and Lady of the Phoenix household still wished to meet you in person, so you should expect a visit from them soon in the near future. Naruto asked in confusion, sweating a little while smiling nervously. They don't want to, roast me, and then have me as lunch for beating their son and canceling their engagement with the Gremory or anything like that, do they? I don't believe so. Graffia shook her head and answered him with a sweat drop. As you already know, the Firebird Phoenix is the symbol of their family, so I have a feeling they just want to meet with the young man who can summon a true phoenix wielding the power of ice, that's all. I see. I hope that there was no hard feeling. There won't be. If anything, even the Lord of the Phoenix household admitted that his son had grown too arrogant and complacent in his inherited powers, and believed that the beating you gave him should be more than enough for him to learn some humility. Naruto raised an eyebrow in surprise at that. Razor's father sounded nothing like he had imagined him to, but then again, that douchebag of a fried chicken had a very cute and nice sister. Graffia then conjured a chair next to his bed and took her seat there to continue her conversation with him. Now, let us move on to a more important matter. She began in a serious tone, making Naruto look over to her. I will be very frank with you, Naruto-sama. You summoning Anivia and Aurelian's soul has caused quite a ruckus among the devils the past few days. Naruto remained quiet and let Graffia tell him without interruption. He could already tell something like that had happened when Graffia told him Rias had to give a report of his sacred gear to the higher-ups of the devil faction and her brother. From the moment he found out he could summon the champions of the League, sentient, living and breathing beings with powers exactly the same as the ones they had the game, Naruto had realized that he was holding in his hand an immense power with almost unlimited potential. The blonde knew, sooner or later, someone would start questioning what purposes he would use his great power for, to protect the innocents, to fight for those he cared about, or to dominate the world or even to destroy it. To be fair, he would want to know too if he were them. He would never call himself a superhero, but it was moments like this that made Naruto truly understand the quote, with great power comes great responsibility. While it's true that your sacred gear allows you to tap into the vast potential of a fictional world of a children game made real, I wouldn't call it children's game, Graffia-san. I mean, there's this whole tournament for it, you know. One of the biggest gaming events of the year, if I do say so myself. Naruto interrupted her with a chuckle. Though, with how toxic the community was, the game was anything but children-friendly. Ahem. Ahem, my deepest apology for my poor choices of words. Graffia coughed into her hand and said, but as I was saying, while your power comes from the game League of Legends itself, it still doesn't change the fact that you are able to call forth beings with extraordinary powers, and even merge with them to wield their powers as yours, making you one of, if not, the most powerful sacred gear user we have ever encountered. With the diversity of your powers as well as the aids of your champions, some are godly entities themselves. Now, this matter also involved Rias Ojusama. Some congratulated her for acquiring such powerful and promising servants, but some also questioned her capabilities to be your master. You see, she is a very capable high-class devil with a promising future, but on the other hand she's also young and very inexperienced. It's not rare for a reincarnated devils to start questioning their places under masters like her as they grow stronger, and more often than not these devils have a tendency to break out of their master's grasps and become stray. Graffia then paused for a second before continuing seriously. I do believe you understand the necessity of precautionary measures, after what happened that night a few days ago. So you guys are gonna seal my power away? Naruto asked calmly. He could tell Graffia was referring to that night when he was possessed by Evelyn. If it had happened before, there was without a doubt it could happen again, so he could see the logic behind the devil's need to take precautions against him. Graffia answered while shaking her head, quite contrary, no. Several devils wish to know more about your power, as this can be the discovery of a new type of sacred gear, one with so many unknown factors and possibilities even the Longinus tier cannot comprehend the full scale of it. You have vast potential as a devil, and you can contribute so much to the devil faction with your sacred gear, so we have no intention to hinder your growth, but at the same time we also cannot allow you to do whatever you want without supervision either. Sound like you guys are gonna give me a supervisor, someone that can keep their eyes on me and act if I cross the line or do anything stupid or something. The blonde trailed off, having a feeling that he had gotten it right. You're correct, Naruto-sama. Who will it be then? You. You're also correct on that one, Naruto-sama. Graffia answered with a very straight face. I see. I was half joking but... Naruto nodded with a very genuine smile, but inside he was freaking out. He still remembered the chilling feeling Graffia had given him when she came to stop him and Rias from having sex while he was being influenced by Evelyn's power. Please keep in mind that I will also prioritize Rias Ojusama's safety and well-being first and foremost, which is why if you ever so much as think about hurting her, I will make sure that you won't live long enough to see the morning after, Naruto-sama. You don't have to tell me. Naruto chuckled forcefully before saying, more to himself than to Graffia, what the fuck did I get myself into? Don't be so nervous, Naruto-sama, you could have been stuck with worse. Graffia tilted her head to the side and gave him a small smile. I will also help you with your sacred gear in any way that I can. As capable as Rias Ojusama is, she will need more guidance to help someone like you. She then put a hand on her chest, drawing his attention to her amazingly firm and large breasts before Naruto forced himself to look away, trying his best to be a gentleman and all that about not being a pervert. I'm sure that I am more than capable for the job, so you can always ask me for help if you ever have any problem. Well, when you put it that way. Naruto smiled as he leaned back against his pillows. Graffia was right. He could have been stuck with worse. Worse. Sure, she scared him, but not that he minded having someone like her around. If he ever got himself in deep shit like the last time with Evelyn, then Graffia could stop him before he did anything that he might regret later. Not to mention that she was also very beautiful and attractive. What is Rias' brother's opinion about me, by the way? He was there too when Bucho gave the report about me to the higher-up devils, correct? Yes. Surzek-sama thought you were pretty cool, and had been learning to play League of Legends with his son, Millikas. Naruto's sweat dropped at that as Graffia let out a heavy sigh, before she realized what she had done and lowered her head apologetically. Oh, so sorry about that, Naruto-sama. It's just that his wife asked me to look after her son for her whenever she's away, and I can assure you that trying to play a video game 2 hours every day isn't doing him any good, especially half of it is with his father, one of the 4 leaders of our people, of all people. Don't worry about it, Graffia-san. Naruto smiled. Just 2 hours of gaming and Graffia thought it was too much? He just couldn't wait to see her reaction when she found out about the amount of time he spent playing League every day. You're just being responsible, that's all. Thank you for your kind words. The silver-haired maid then continued with a small smile. The children love you, by the way. They do? Graffia nodded her head in confirmation before explaining, yes, the rating game between Razor Phoenix-sama and Rias Gremorio-sama was an unofficial event, but it was not private and could very well decide the future of our faction, so a lot of devil families had access to the live broadcast channel and ended up watching it with their children, who all thought you were pretty cool being able to summon video games characters and weapons and fight with them like that. Many has started calling you the League Summoner for the game that you summon your champions from. The League Summoner, huh? I think I like that. The blonde smiled adoringly at that. He could understand their feelings. He could still remember the joy and excitement he had felt when he learnt that he could summon weapons and then champions of his favorite video game. Having a power like that was like a childhood dream came true. I think I have troubled you long enough today, Naruto-sama. Please excuse me, but it's time for me to take my leave. Graffia said as she stood up from her seat and lowered her head to him. I will see you later. Please get some more rest for now, Naruto-sama. Oju-sama will be worried if you don't. And with that said, Graffia left the room, allowing Naruto to sink back into the bed, closing his eyes for a second before he turned his head and reached out to grab his champion's watch that he had noticed laying on the bedside table near the flower vase. Putting it on, the blonde checked if she was available, and then summoned her with a burst of magic. In a flash, an extremely beautiful and attractive young woman appeared in the air before him. Her hair was the color of blue, flowed into blonde and tied into 2 large twin tails a little bit to the back of her head by 2 large hair clips, with several bands framing her oval face. She wore a long, flowing shoulderless blue dress with gold accents that showed off her incredibly voluptuous figure and very, very large chest, quite contrary to a certain heiress who shared the same name. But perhaps the most noticeable thing about this young woman was the stringed instrument that floated down to rest on her lap as she tilted her head and gave him a heartwarming smile. Naruto felt his breath hitched, but the blonde did his best to calm his racing heart down as he greeted her with a smile. Hello, Sona. Good morning, Summoner. The young woman continued to smile at him, lips not moving as her voice echoed in his mind. The maven of the strings had been mute since birth, unable to utter a sound, but the telepathic link between summoner and champion allowed her to communicate freely with him. It's an honor to finally meet you. She lowered her head in a bow, delicate hands resting on the instrument on her laps. No, the pleasure is all mine. Naruto smiled at her before asking, hoping to get to know this beautiful champion better. So how's Demasha these days? Not quite the same as it used to be, Summoner. Ever since Silas and his rebellion, as well as the assassination of King Jarvan III, Demasha has changed. Sona answered, a sad smile on her face. Things must have been difficult for you and the mages there, huh? Naruto asked, nodding his head in understanding before telling her, you know what, Sona, whenever you aren't on League's duties, you can stay in this world with me. He told her, smiling genuinely and making Sona look at him surprised. Magic users aren't shunned or disliked here, so you won't have to worry about anything ever again. You can play music without worry. I thank you for your kindness, Summoner. Sona lowered her head to him once again. Please give me some time to think about your offer. Demasha isn't quite home anymore, but it is still home. It's not so easy to leave something like that behind. I understand. Naruto smiled at her. Would you like me to play some music for you, Summoner? Sona asked, moving a hand on the strings of her etwal, her magical instrument. Please do, and call me Naruto. There's no need for you to call me Summoner. Sigh, I really should ask Professor Heimerdinger to spread the word out. Being called a Summoner makes me feel as old as him. He joked with a grin with his best Heimerdinger's impression, making Sona giggle softly into her hand. The instrument raised up magically and floated before her as Sona struck her first chore. There was no name for the piece. It was Sona's own creation, and Naruto found himself relaxed the moment the first note was played. The Maven's hands brushed the strings gently, and her fingers danced like fireflies as long, twisting illusions rose around them, stretching and twirling as the very air hummed. It was brilliant. A language that only she, the instrument, and her summoner alone shared. No one else could see them. Sona continued to slip her music into her summoner's heart. Music to warm his body. Music to soothe his mind, and music to give him strength to face the challenges ahead. All around the residence, there were only smiles and closed eyes. The Grimoire devils and their servants had become enamored, absorbed as they listened to the magical music that was being played by the Maven of the Strings, and could only wonder who could play such beautiful and wondrous music. Drake. So as I just explained, from this day on I, Rias Grimoire, am also going to live in this house. I may be a little inexperienced, but please take care of me, Okasama, Otosama. Naruto was sitting in the living room of his house with his parents, while standing in front of him was the beautiful crimson-haired young woman that was his master Rias Grimoire, who had her head lowered to Minato and Kushina Uzumaki. Also, on his left was none other than Asia, who had tears in her eyes and an unpleasant face. Unlike Rias and his parents, she seemed to be in a very bad mood. Era, what am I supposed to do now? Kushina giggled excitedly into her hand as she looked at Rias, clearly feeling amazed by the young woman's beauty and attractiveness. First it is Asia-chan, now it's Rias-san. It's like I'm going to have two amazing daughters-in-law now. Such kind words for someone like me, Okasama. Truly, I don't deserve them. Rias stated proudly as she lowered her head to the loving mother of her pawn, who was still feeling surprised even after he had discussing it with Rias, who had claimed that she wished to strengthen her relationship with him, who she now started. I'm proud of you, son. Minato sobbed quietly as he placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and told him with a very, very proud smile on his face, making his eyebrow twitch, what a man you have become. Take good care of them. Now, Naruto. Rias then turned her attention over to her pawn, smiling sweetly at him. We have your parents' permission now, so I am now a member of your family now. Can you please help me take my trunk to my room right away? Right away, Bucho. Naruto nodded his head and replied to her with a smile. The house had two guest rooms, one of which had already been occupied by Asia. It made him wonder if he could really offer Sona and some of his champions a home with him here, safe from the dangers of Runeterra, as Ari had been hinting that she wanted to live with him too after her journey in Bilgewater was over. If Sona agreed to his offer, then maybe he could talk about it with his master? See if she could help him solve this not-so-little problem? Naruto-san, I will help too. Before he could even stand up, Asia grabbed his hand and tried to follow him with a cute pout on her face. It seems that the only hope is polygamy, but it will be against the teachings of God, but at this rate. I don't want to lose. What was that about polygamy? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Where did she even learn those words? Did she make some weird friends at school he didn't know about? Momo surely wouldn't teach her something like that. It's nothing. When Naruto turned to ask her, Asia just huffed and looked away to avoid his gaze. Asia seemed to have been in a very bad mood ever since Rias arrived at the doorstep of his house, but Naruto only had a hunch, so he didn't dare to come to a final conclusion. His mother, meanwhile, seemed to know what's going on, as she had a playful and somewhat mischievous smile on her face as she looked at the three of them. Here, Naruto, that should go over there. Rias instructed, pointing her hand around the room. By the way, Graffia will be moving in to live with us next week. Eh? Asia both gasped in shock, but Naruto didn't look so surprised. Is this about her being my supervisor? Yes. Rias nodded her head in confirmation as she finished putting down her Gundam action figures. She hit it well, but Naruto could see that she didn't quite approve of having Graffia around them. Why, he had no idea, but maybe it was because having the silver-haired maid around would be a constant reminder of her weakness and inabilities to be his master, as several high-class devils had put it from what he had been told. Although Naruto couldn't help but feel that it wasn't quite the main reason. Nevertheless, starting from tomorrow, she would join him in his training with his teachers, the masters of Runeterra. I want to become stronger too, she had told him. So, where will she be staying? Naruto couldn't help but ask. Just so you know, this is the last available room in my house. You don't have to worry about it, Naruto-kun, my family will take care of the renovation. Rias gave him a meaningful wink, but before he could ask her what did she mean by that, Rias had stood up and asked him anyway, why don't you take a shower with me? I can wash your back for you. Eh? Naruto spluttered, his face becoming almost as red as his master's hair. Are you serious? Yeah, why not? Rias asked as if it was obvious before she put a hand on her chest and said, looking over at his computer, and once we're done, let's play some League with each other. I will be your duo partner. No. Finally having enough, Asia exploded and jumped in between them with teary eyes. You can't just come in and take my place like that, Bucho-san. I am Naruto-san's support. Asia. I'm sorry, but from now on it will be like this whether you like it or not. Plus, Naruto's main role isn't even ADC. He's a mid laner and I've been practicing to be his jungler. Our synergy is going to be like Batman and Robin or Faker and Benji. Rias said as she crossed her arms under her ample bust, wearing a serious look on her face while looking at Asia, who refused to back down. How about we settle it with a 1v1? The winner gets to duo with Naruto later? I don't want to lose, but why do I feel like I'm going to lose? Asia spluttered as Rias grabbed her laptop. Naruto could only look at them. Why do they make it feel like being his duo partner such a big deal? It's not like he was going to grind as hard as he had done before, now that he had gotten out of bronze and was now a silver 2 after playing just about a dozen games or so with Asia, proving to everyone, and even himself, that he just wasn't that bad at the game. Though, his goal remained the same, climbing to Challenger, so that one day he could become a pro player and win the Summoners Cup at least one. Naruto, Heimerdinger has something to tell you. Oh sure. The blonde answered when he heard Ari's voice. The nine-tailed Gumiho was the only one who he had a permanent telepathic link with, so the two of them could communicate anytime they wished. What's up, Professor? Ahem, my young summoner. I think you should know that there is going to be a new champion in the league. Check your watch. Really? Naruto asked, smiling excitedly as he raised his hand and turned on his watch to see the new champion. However, his face fell a little when he saw that they were listed as a champion of the Shadow Isles. But when the new champion hologram figure was displayed from the watch, Naruto had his eyes widened in surprise, because she looked nothing like someone who came from the Shadowlands of Runeterra. It was a young woman, and she reminded him a bit of Seraphine, bright and radiant, beautiful like a doll with her bright blue hair tied into twintails draping over her chest with large, drill-like curls and black ribbons keeping them in place, as she donned herself in a high-class black and white dress with black frills, and a purple bow in front of her stomach. The most noticeable thing about her, however, was that she carried with her a massive scissors. Her name and alias was Gwen, the Hallowed Seamstress. Chapter 11. The Familiar Forest? Naruto repeated Rias' words. It had been a week since the raiding game against Razor Phoenix, and things had pretty much gone back to the way it had been before the Yakitori douchebag's arrival, with Naruto carrying on with pretty much the same daily routine. Yes. I think it's about time you and Asia get your own familiars. The Familiar Forest is one of the locations for new devils to find for themselves their first familiars. Rias said as she drank the tea Akino had made for her. For us devils, familiars are our partners. They can help us perform a variety of different tasks, including, but not limited to, the delivering of messages, searching for objects and people, spying on someone and any other within their range of abilities that you can think of. Almost every familiars also has the ability to use magic to some extent, and some familiars can even fight alongside their masters. As she explained the concept behind familiars to Naruto, who had Yumi proudly sitting on his lap and having him brushed her back with a comb, Rias held up her right hand. A magic circle spread across her palm, and after a brief flare of magic followed by a small cloud of smoke, a tiny red bat appeared and floated above her hand, flapping its wings repeatedly. "This is my familiar." She smiled at Naruto. "She helps me with finding people and handing out flyers. In fact, she was the one who gave Issei Hyudu one of my contract flyers the day the fallen angel Rainier tried to kill him. Oh damn, so I guess I owe her for that." Naruto nodded his head in acknowledgement at the bat creature, and gave her a grin, making her smile back at him in response before Rias dismissed her, sending her back to whenever her familiar stayed whenever she was not needed. Naruto then turned his attention over to the other members of Rias' peerage and asked them in interest. "So what types of familiars do you guys have?" "Oh, this is my familiar Naruto-kun." Akino smiled as she summoned her familiar, a small green oni-like creature with a tuft of hair on the top of his head. "He's just the cutest little thing, isn't he? I actually have a small family of them." Smiling, Kiba decided to join in, summoning a little bird. "This is my familiar," he introduced before quickly sending the creature away when he noticed how Yumi was looking at his familiar. Kaneko then summoned her own familiar, an adorable kitten with white hair just like her owner's. "This is Shiro." The cat meowed softly at them, and when Yumi responded to her, Naruto knew that the two were well acquaintances. The magical cat and her companion had stayed at Kaneko's place a few times before the raiding game against Razor Phoenix, so Naruto had no doubt that Kaneko had summoned her familiar and introduced them to each other. "So if you two don't have any more questions," Rias said, "then tonight we're going to go to the familiar forest to get you to your familiars." Break. That night, the peerage of Rias Gremory appeared in the familiar forest in a crimson magic circle with the crest of the Gremory devil household, dressing in the clothes that they were most comfortable with. While Asia, Akino and Kaneko had chosen to wear their school uniforms, Kiba came in with a black tracksuit. Rias was wearing a short black skirt and a dark red shirt with black designs and a pair of red and matching color boots. Naruto wore his usual outfit, a black hoodie jacket over a white shirt and black pants along with his orange sneakers. At the same time, he had Yumi floating beside him, writing on the sentient book of thresholds as usual. "This is the familiar forest," Rias introduced with a smile on her face as she extended a hand forward. "Here, you can find many different types of magical creatures that you can turn into your familiars. All two recently reincarnated devils plus a cat and her book companion could only stare at the surrounding forest before them. The forest's trees stood over them, their withered trunks and leafless branches casting shadows in hypnotic and haunting ways along the ground. The earth underneath their feet crunched as they moved, with dried twigs snapping under their heels as the air appeared to be covered in gloomy clouds. "Whoa," Yumi said in amazement as she looked at the forest before her. "This place reminds me of the forests on the Shadow Isles." "Really?" Naruto asked, before remembering that Yumi had once gotten lost on the Shadow Isles looking for her master with book. "Creepy places. Though, we met Makai there once. He's quite a nice tree though," the magical cat stated, referring to the ragful, but still kindred treant who tirelessly fought against the unnatural horrors of the Shadow Isles to preserve life and restore his home to its former beauty, to how it had once been before Vigo the Ruined King caused the great ruination and turned the blessed Isles into the land of insatiable, predatory spirits of the dead. If there was a champion from the Shadow Isles that he was willing to summon if the situation called for it, then Makai was one of them. Though from what he had been hearing about Gwen, the hallowed seamstress, it was very possible that he could summon and work with her in the near future. "Today is a full moon, a perfect time for us devils to find our familiars," Rias explained as she pointed her hand up at the red moon above them. "It is also the reason I can't just take you here to get your familiars, even though it's okay for a newly reincarnated devil to have one, because we have also need to wait for a specific time of the month and book an appointment with the familiar master. Now where is? Gotta catch them all. Before Before Rias could finish, while looking around as if she was searching for someone, a cry was heard and everyone looked up to see a man standing on a tree branch. Naruto shuddered, because the guy literally gave him the impression of a Satoshi from Pokemon gone horribly wrong that grew up, experienced the hardships of adulthood, but still refused to accept that he should no longer wear boy shorts, a white tank top and a backward cap. I'm Satoshi, the familiar master in training. I can catch any familiar that you can think of. The man began to introduce himself, while performing a series of strange Super Sentai poses that looked lame enough to be rejected by the production company, leaving Asia and Naruto to sweat drop while staring up at him. Did he get his style from Pokemon, or was it Super Sentai? Naruto had to wonder. Though, his upbeat attitude and eccentric behaviors were a nice change of pace in the gloomy atmosphere of the familiar forest, which had started to affect Asia. If he didn't show up and lighten up the mood with his weird antics, then Naruto would have talked to Asia about it, and maybe even asked Yumi if she could use her cuteness to help Asia. He might look odd, but Satoshi-san professional. He is the one who helped Yuto-kun, Kaneko-chan and myself acquire our own familiars. Akino leaned forward and whispered into Naruto's ear, which made him shudder a bit because her lips almost touched his earlobe, her breath tickling his skin. Satoshi-san, these are the two devils I have told you about. They are here for their familiars today. Rias introduced, gesturing her hand toward Asia and Naruto. Upon looking at the latter and noticing the cat writing on the book floating next to him, Satoshi's eyes sparkled with excitement and immediately caused him to leap down from the tree branch to run toward Naruto, eyeing Yumi carefully. The cat just stared at him as if he was crazy. Oh. What type of cat is this? She's magical, correct? He asked, bombarding Naruto and Yumi with questions. How come I have never seen one like her before? Where did you acquire one like her? Is it possible to breed more like her? Yikes. You're weird. Stay away from me. Yumi hissed at him and fired a prowling projectile from the tip of her tail, though it flew awfully slow and one didn't need to be a genius to know it was dangerous, so the familiar master in training wasted no time to jump to the side and dodge it as it hit the ground and explode upon impact. Wow, she can talk too. Now that is an amazing familiar, can I touch? But before he could continue on, Satoshi felt something hard pressing against his forehead, and looking to see Naruto holding a silver revolver at his head. Don't get too excited, pal. Touch my cat, and I will blow your head off. Naruto stated firmly as Yumi looked up from behind his shoulder and stuck out a tongue at the familiar master. Right, sorry about that. Satoshi chuckled nervously while holding his hands up in defense. It was after this that Naruto took his gun back and made it disappear. So what type of familiar do you want? Strong? Fast or poisonous? The last thing I need now is something to remind me of Teemo and his annoying poisonous mushrooms. Sure, he was extremely useful in the match against Razor and Peerage, but it still didn't change the fact that Teemo was one of his least favorite champions for his annoying ultimate ability. So don't talk about poisonous things out of the blue. What kind do you recommend for us? Satoshi then took something that looked like a catalog and flipped to a certain page before showing it to Naruto. What he is showing was a ferocious-looking dragon with beautiful celestial blue scales, its drawing taking over the entire page. This is the one I would recommend for someone as badass as you are. Satoshi said, and Naruto could detect flattery in his tone. One of the Dragon Kings. Chaos Karma Dragon, Tiamat. She is a legendary dragon, and is also the only female among the Dragon Kings. So far, no demon has managed to capture her. This one is quite obvious, and is said to be as strong as a Mao. Ugh, no thank you very much. Naruto stated with a deadpan expression. He's here looking for a familiar, not trying to get himself killed by a Dragon King with the strength of a Mao. How about a cat familiar like Kaneko? Yumi suggested excitedly. But no dog or rat, please. Naruto pointed a finger at her to agree with his feline champion. Having a dog or a rat as a familiar with Yumi around was a big no. I would like something cute, if it is possible. Asia stepped up and told the familiar master, who then stared at her in disbelief. No, 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 why can't you newbie just can't do it right? You will want familiars to be useful and strong. Zatoji made a fist in his hand as he spun around and shifted into a heroic pose. A devil needs a strong companion to accompany them into battle, that's why one must always aim for. So what is your familiar then? Naruto asked with a very straight face, causing Zatoji to shut his mouth immediately. You talk about catching the big and strong ones, but what is your familiar? Do you even have one that is as powerful as you want us to have? You are a familiar master, so you must have a legendary familiar at your disposal, am I right? Era. Akino giggled softly into her head while looking at the face Zatoji was making after Naruto's speech. Ahaha. Good one, young man, good one. Zatoji then suddenly busted out in awkward laughter before turning around and showing Naruto another drawing of a 9-headed snake-like creature. Which was kinda obvious what its name was. Please seriously consider this one. A Hydra. It is incredible and has a deadly poison. There is no one in the world that can withstand its poison, and above all that, it is also immortal. The worst creature in the world, which can even kill the master himself. Pretty useful, isn't it, ? Yikes. Naruto then turned to Yumi as she gave him a disapproving look, telling her with the same straight face as he had before, you know what, Yumi, I think you can use last chapter on him anytime you want. Just blast his ass off somewhere he can find one of these creatures for himself. With pleasure. Now, calm down you two. Rias smiled softly as she put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, and the other petting Yumi. Dragons and Hydras are both great, so it would be awesome if you can acquire one for yourself. We have plenty of time so we can always look for one. Seriously? Naruto asked in disbelief. What? It's amazing to have a strong familiar and as well as useful, you know. Smiling, Rias told him while waving a hand. Behind them, the rest of her peerage seemed to agree with her. They all looked so positive that he could catch a familiar as powerful as it was dangerous. You can do it, Saito-senpai. Yup, even Kaneko, you were able to make it out of bronze after 11 years, so I am sure that you can catch a Hydra for yourself. Still, Naruto wasn't convinced. The blonde shook his head, pointing his hand at the Hydra in Zatoji's book with something like that, I'd rather get Cho'Gath to be my familiar. Why can't we just start off with something basic? Plus, he had Yumi to help him out whenever she was around, and he had no doubt that she's so much more useful than most familiars he could find in the forest. Let's just find Asia a familiar first. It's not like I am in dire need for one. Rias and her group nodded their heads in understanding. He was a summoner. He could summon any creature-type champions that related to League to his aid, so having a familiar wouldn't make that much of a difference for him unless it was a very, very powerful one that could affect even his status. Very well then, let's find something cute for the little miss here. Zatoji declared. This guy. Naruto muttered in annoyance with a tick mark on his forehead. Please follow me this way. Zatoji said as he walked on ahead, and led them further into the forest. This forest has many different areas in it. Right now, we are in the area where familiars more aligned with darkness gather, but of course most of them are not the cutest creatures you can find. If we go to a different location, however, I am sure that we can find plenty of cute familiars for the little miss. He then led them to a beautiful lake, with sparkling water that seemingly glowed even in the middle of the night with a red moon above them. For example, there is an Undine, water spirit that lives in this lake. Zatoji explained to them. Undines are maidens of pure hearts and beautiful bodies, so I am sure that if you boys wish to establish a harem of beautiful familiars you can always find a suitable companion in them. I bet the lake has a lot of fish. Naruto, do you bring a fishing rod? Let's go fishing. Yumi told her summoner excitedly as they both ignored Zatoji and his speech about Undine as well as his comment about them. Before he could answer her, however, the water of the lake suddenly shone brightly. Oh, it looks like you are in luck. The familiar master shouted excitedly and cheerfully. The group then waited patiently for her to emerge, and they didn't have to wait long. First, it was a mop of shiny blue hair and a transparent robe, following by a massive and muscular body of insane biceps, calves thicker than a man's waist, underneath a breastplate that appeared to be made of iron, and a scarred face that looked like that of a seasoned gladiator. "What type of fish is that?" Yumi asked in confusion, making Zatoji look at her as if he was offended. "No, that isn't Undine." He explained. "You see, the world of Undines and their kinds is based on power, and they always need to fight for their territories. If it is not strong, you cannot have your own lake, so this one is definitely a high level. I recommend either of you to take this one. An aquatic familiar specializing in the physical department will not be a waste." I wonder how Set will fare against one of these insane-looking Undines in a hand-to-hand combat battle." Naruto scratched his chin thoughtfully before looking at Asia, "But I don't think she's the familiar you're looking for, right?" "Yes, Naruto-san." Asia answered him with a smile. When another Undine arrived to start a challenge for the lake, the group decided to leave, not wanting to be caught in their violent battle. They continued to travel through the forest, meeting a variety of creatures that came out of bushes to greet them. Some were extremely cute, so Asia wanted to make them her familiars, but Zatoji managed to convince her out of it and dragged them off to another area before she could make the final decision. "Oh!" the familiar master suddenly exclaimed, pointing his finger upward to a tree branch. "It's a Sprite Dragon." Everyone looked up and saw a small dragon, with blue diamond-like scales, and a small pair of wings, sitting on a tree branch. "It's a very rare magical dragon that uses blue electricity. He's so cute," Asia exclaimed excitedly as she looked up at the dragon. Indeed. This is my first time seeing a Sprite Dragon." Rias nodded her head and told them. "It appears that he's still young, but if one want to capture him, now is the time." Zatoji explained. "You certainly won't be able to do it when he's an adult. He won't be as strong as the Dragon Kings, but he will definitely rise to become the strongest dragons." "Damn, now I really want one for myself," Naruto said and rolled up his sleeves. "Hold on, Asia, I will go up there and catch him for." But before Naruto could finish, he saw the Sprite Dragon looking up at the space above them, forcing him to do the same. When he saw what was coming toward them, he immediately gave the order without needing to think twice. "Yumi, shield on everyone." The cat didn't need to ask why, she just did what her summoner told her to and flew around the ground to create a dome of magical barrier around them, just in time to protect the group from something that looked like gelatin with a greenish hue raining down from above them. "Ugh, what are these things?" Yumi asked as she hid behind her own shield, looking at the green slimes as they fell to the ground, melting away the grass around them. The slimes then got up and circled around them, crawling onto Yumi's shield and trying to break in. "Zack, is that you?" "I didn't summon him, Yumi," Naruto said as he looked at all the slimes around them. Yumi did have a point. They did look like Zack's goo-like cells. "Well, as you can see, these are just simple slimes," Zatoji explained after taking a closer look at the slime. "They usually act together to attack their victims. Even if they are monsters, these slimes only focus on female secretion, so they are not really dangerous. Sounds like something that comes straight out of one of those hentai anime to me," Naruto commented with a humorous chuckle as he summoned Rumble's Tristy Mech's flamethrower. "No, seriously, why did something like that really existed? Time for some pest control. Era, allow me to help you, Naruto-kun," Akino said as she stepped forward, her fingers crackling with electricity. Behind her, Rias and the others quickly followed their examples, summoning their magic and weapons. "When I count to 3, Yumi, lower your shield and protect Asia," Naruto told his feline champion and turned on the flamethrower on 3. 1, 2. Before he could speak up the final count, however, the Sprite Dragon took a leap off of the tree branch and flew down toward them. Once he was close enough, the little dragon started firing blue bolts of lightning toward the slimes and fried them to ashes, removing them from Yumi's shield with ease. Once that the slimes crawling on her shield had all been taken down, Yumi lowered her shields and allowed the devils to take care of the ones on the ground, with Naruto using his flamethrower to make sure that they wouldn't cause trouble to anyone in the future. With their combined efforts, it did not take it long for the slimes to be totally exterminated. Everyone fell into silence though when the Sprite Dragon shot forward and latched onto Asia's chest before he started rubbing its head against her. Asia looked surprised by the affectionate gesture, but quickly seemed to melt from the cuteness of the dragon and hugged him back, rubbing his head with one hand, causing it to coo in appreciation. He's a male dragon, so he will be attached to females of other species, especially one with pure heart. Zatoji explained as the dragon continued to enjoy being spoiled by Asia rather happily. From what I can see here, he seems to have chosen the girl as his master. See, can I really make this dragon into my familiar? Asia asked hesitantly, despite holding the dragon very closely. Of course. He chose you, so it's only right that it becomes your familiar. Zatoji replied matter-of-factly. Everyone comes here looking for their familiars, but there are also times when the familiars are the one who choose their masters. You know, change your outfit, and I will take your words very seriously, old man. Naruto said with a deadpan expression, making Zatoji chuckle at him. The blonde then walked toward Asia and looked to congratulate her for acquiring such a cute and potentially powerful familiar, only for the blue dragon to snap his head toward him and look at him dangerously. Whoa, easy there buddy. The dragon growled. He doesn't like you very much. Yumi suddenly spoke up from beside Naruto. He thinks you are a delinquent who is trying to hurt his master. You understand him? The blonde asked in surprise, looking at his feline champion. Of course. Yumi replied proudly as she floated toward the blue dragon, who looked up at her and seemed to start talking to Yumi. Oh no, he's not my master. He's my summoner. What did he say? He wants to know if I am your familiar. Yumi answered him before she asked, much to his surprise, do you want me to be your familiar? Can I? Naruto couldn't help but ask. Yumi replied with a question and talked about it like it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, why not? What about your master? Nora? Nora was Yumi's master, the Yordle enchantress she had been traveling the magical realms of Runeterra looking for. In a way, Yumi could be considered his familiar too, with how many times he had been prioritizing summoning her and entrusting her with protecting Asia or any of his friends. The familiar contract magic would only make it official between them, allowing him to summon her whenever he wanted, which he could already do from the very beginning. Naruto had wanted to ask her to become his familiar, but decided to hold off and wait until he could meet Nora and ask her for permission, as he respected the love Yumi had for her. I'm sure she won't mind. She always wants to have someone looking out for me whenever she goes off somewhere, like what she is doing now. The feline champion answered and waved a paw at him, with book shaking a little to show that it agreed with its companion. Plus, you won't be able to find a familiar as amazing and as cool as I am. Although, I demand an additional fish in return for my service as your familiar. I'm sure I can manage that. Naruto smiled as he looked at Yumi, who smiled at him very well. Yumi, I'd love nothing more than to have you as my familiar. This is great. Rias said finally. Behind her, the rest of her peerage smiled approvingly, no one more so that Kaneko herself as she watched Naruto and Yumi together. Then let's prepare the familiar contract, you two. Congratulations for acquiring your first ever familiar. A few minutes later, Naruto and Asia both stood with their chosen familiars standing inside their respective magic circles, which then glowed brightly as they started chanting the vow needed to turn the cat and dragon into their familiars. Once the magic ended and the contracts were formed, the magic circle died down and allowed the Sprite Dragon to fly back to Asia and Yumi to jump on book. Asia smiled softly as she pet the blue dragon in her arms. Thank you for choosing me to be your master, Rato-kun. Rato? Rias asked with a raised eyebrow. Asia blushed slightly before explaining, well, it uses lightning, so I took Reijiki and combined it with Naruto-san's name. Naruto pointed at himself before asking in surprise, you named it after me? Why yes. Asia replied with a small blush before asking nervously, is that a problem? Naruto shook his head and smiled radiantly at Asia. No, not at all, Asia. To be honest, I really feel honored that you. Before he could finish, Rado shot a bolt of lightning at him, but Yumi instantly formed a shield around her new master/summoner, preventing him from getting shocked. No harming my master, Rado. She said disapprovingly at the blue dragon, who huffed and turned his head away. Please don't attack Naruto-san again, Rado-kun. He's my precious friend. Asia told her dragon familiar with a nervous smile, while Naruto was just chuckling in amusement at the little dragon. Little did he know that he was being watched by a certain cloaked figure. Short Omake, just for the humor and not to be taken seriously. In a flash, the boss, Set, appeared. It was I, Set. The crime lord of Ionia's criminal underworld shouted confidently as he pointed his thumb at himself, a wide smile on his face now. Where are you, Naru? Before he could finish, he was met with a fist to the face by a tall and muscular figure, which was revealed to be an Undine from the lake in the familiar forest. The boss gritted his teeth, not in pain but annoyance as he flipped around in midair, before landing on the ground a few feet away, looking at the massive water spirit before him. Now, who might you be, beautiful? Set asked as he cracked his knuckle. The Undine just let out a roar before charging at the human/Vastaya hybrid, who then shot forward and engaged her in a fierce battle of hand-to-hand combat, but with absolutely no techniques or whatsoever. Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Finally, a worthy opponent. Set shouted as he pushed back the muscular Undine with an uppercut, followed by a heavy blow to the chin. Our battle will be legendary. And with that declaration, he rushed toward the Undine, his whole body glowing brightly with the magic of the Vastaya. On the tree near the lake, Naruto sat with Yumi sitting on his lap, watching in amusement as Set fought the Undine, who he was rooting for to beat the crap out of Set. Chapter 12. About a week after the raiding game against Razor Phoenix and his peerage, a few days after Asia had acquired a little Sprite Dragon as her first familiar and Naruto having Yumi to officially become his, their school life at Kuo had more or less returned to normal. Meaning that he was back to his days of sitting in class with absolutely nothing to do, other than worrying about league-related stuff, while acting like he was listening to some dull-looking teacher's lecture on tedious things he would most likely never going to use in his life as a devil. It really couldn't get more normal than that, at least for him. At least now he had something else to look forward to as well, aside from hours of grinding for LP in his most favorite game, which had become his life with how it related to his power, Runeterra Arsenal. But just like it had always been from the day he became a devil, things started to get really interesting real quick. After they had finished having lunch in their classroom, Naruto and Asia quickly gathered their belongings and made their ways to the old school building to go to the clubroom of the Occult Research Club, their main base of operation with their master Rias Gremory and the rest of her peerage. If nothing happened, they would play League till it's time for them to go home. We're here, the blonde announced as she stepped into the clubroom, with Asia walking beside him and Yumi riding on book like a flying carpet with a proud smile on her face. From what Ari had told him, the cat was even prouder than before. She took a lot of pride in being the first cat to ever become the familiar of a summoner, and had been bragging about it to any champion residing within the institute to the point it became annoying for some of them. Naruto? He just didn't care about it all that much. He was just glad that Yumi was enjoying herself being his familiar. Era, come on in you three. Rias greeted them with a bright smile, and the blonde saw that his master and Akino weren't the only ones in the clubroom, as there were also the student council's president and the heiress of the Citri devil household, Sona Citri, and her queen, Tsubaki Shinra, sitting on the sofa with her across from Rias. Standing behind them were the infamous leader of the perverted trio Issei Hayadu, and a male student Naruto had seen once before in the student council, a young man who had recently become the new secretary of the organization, with short blonde hair and gray eyes. He wore the Kuo Academy boys' school uniform, albeit without the blazer, and his sleeves were both rolled up. Good afternoon, Sona Kaishu, Tsubaki-senpai. The blonde greeted the two girls with his trademark grin as Asia followed his example and Yumi followed him into the room, with the two male students looking at her in amazement. "Good to see you are still with us today, Uzumaki-kun." Sona greeted him with a small smile as she drank the tea served by Akino. "So you are that person who has been giving Sona Kaishu and everyone so much trouble?" the other male student said with a look of displeasure on his face. "Do I know you?" Naruto asked blankly in response. Instead of answering his question, he turned to Rias and asked her, "Oh, so you didn't tell him about us, Rias-senpai?" It's quite understandable because Uzumaki-kun is not at school that often," Sona stated calmly, making the blonde chuckle sheepishly before moving further into the room. "Plus, it wasn't that long ago that you became a devil, so his reaction is perfectly normal." "Naruto, these two are Sona's new servants. It's tradition for us to introduce our new servants to each other after they have gotten used to their new life," Rias explained before gesturing her hand toward Issei and Saji. "You already know Hayadu-kun, your classmate, while Genshiro Saji here is her new rook. I see. Pleased to meet you. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Rias Gremory-senpai's pawn. Naruto nodded his head and introduced himself to them in a friendly manner. "I'm Asia Argento. Please get along with me." Asia also introduced herself and offered her hand out. Instantly the two boys reacted. Yes, please get along well, Asia-chan. If it is a cute and beautiful blonde foreigner like you, then I am definitely very happy." Saying that, the two ran toward Asia, looking to be the first to touch her hand, but neither wanted their colleague to take the lead. Both tried to intercept each other, pushing and shoving each other while making their way toward the beautiful nun, making her look at them nervously. Naruto, meanwhile, didn't look amused and decided to step in between the two male students and Asia, pushing gently her to stand behind with one hand while giving Issei and Saji a firm look. "Ha, it appears that you are having some difficult time, Sona," Rias said in satisfaction as she leaned back and drank her tea. "Lucky you, Rias, to be able to find such a reliable servant in Uzumaki-kun," Sona said with a sigh. "I think I will keep my distance if I were either of you." Naruto spoke up blankly to the two before adding, directing his gaze at a certain pervert, "Especially you, Hayadu. I noticed the way you stared at Asia in class, and I don't like it." "Wha? What the hell is wrong with it? She's cute, so of course a man can't stop looking at her," Issei exclaimed, looking furious. From what Naruto had heard, Issei was a pervert, and he wasn't ashamed about it. "It is bad enough that a handsome guy like you is around all these beautiful and big-breasted ladies, and you even want to keep this beautiful blonde just for yourself too. Don't think so highly of yourself, damn pretty boy. Even though I'm a new devil, it took Kaicho all of her pawn pieces to reincarnate me, so I definitely won't lose to you." Saying that, he summoned a red dragon-like gauntlet with a green jewel and 2 golden spikes on his left arm. "Oh, impressive, what is that?" Naruto asked, faking an amazed smile. "This is my sacred gear, boosted gear," Issei announced, making Rias widen her eyes in surprise. So that's why the boy would have taken her the entire set of pawns to revive, just like Naruto. He was the holder of boosted gear, also known as the Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet. It was listed as one of the original 13 Longinus with the spirit of the Welsh dragon residing within it. It has the power to allow me to surpass the powers of even God, so you better watch out from now. I see. Naruto nodded his head in understanding before gesturing his hand to Yumi. "Since you have shown me your sacred gear, I guess it's only fair for me to do the same. Meet Yumi the magical cat and her companion, Book." Yumi held her head up and smiled proudly in response, causing a tick mark to appear on Issei's forehead. Are you comparing my god-killing sacred gear with a freaking pussy ca? Before he could finish, Naruto had summoned his silver revolver blaze and pointed it between Issei's forehead, which happened faster than he could blink his eye. The pervert gulped nervously as Naruto pulled back the hammer of his weapon, and Yumi gave him a disapproving look while hissing at him. Finish that sentence now, I dare you. Naruto taunted, but in a deadly calm tone. Do not insult my cat, ever. Got it? Issei could only nod his head dumbly before taking a few steps back after Naruto had removed his gun from his forehead, but that didn't stop Yumi from hissing at him in annoyance. Sai, if you've finished embarrassing yourself and our group, Issei-kun, then please keep your mouth shut for the rest of this conversation if you don't have anything else logical to say. Sona spoke up finally with a heavy sigh, making Issei shudder nervously before she looked at Naruto. My deepest apology for my servant behavior, Uzumaki-kun, Yumi-san. As he said, he's just a new devil, so he did not have as much experience as you did, so he still has a somewhat rude attitude toward everyone around him. I will make sure that he won't repeat the same mistake ever again. Her voice was perfectly calm as she said that, and it made Issei shudder nervously before Sona turned back to Rias and asked her, anyway Rias, our school will be hosting the ball tournament in a few days. Will you and your club participate? Because he was a transferred student, Naruto had never actually participated in the famous ball tournament of Kuo Academy. Overall, it was an event where they was going to play ball-related sports, such as baseball, soccer, basketball, tennis and many sports like that. Those matches included contests between classes, genders and obviously, there were also some between clubs, and that, including the occult research club. He had heard a lot of good things about it, so to say he was looking forward to participating with everyone in the club would be an understatement. Of course, we will, Sona. Rias answered with a confident smile, I look forward to being paired up with the student council, so you better prepare your servants to taste defeat for the third time in 3 years. Big words coming from someone who lost to me in every gender ball games we have ever participated in. Sona smiled fearlessly in return as she tilted her glasses up with her ring finger, a bluish aura radiating around her. Don't worry Rias, there's a first time for everything. I'm sure that you might be able to put on a good show this year. Try to keep up, Sona. Rias replied with her own crimson aura, showing her rival/childhood friend her own conviction. Naruto could understand immediately that the two heiresses were very close, with such strong, but seemingly friendly rivalry with each other. Oh well, I think this is enough for the introduction of our new members. So, forgive us for now. Sona spoke as she stood up with Tsubaki, preparing to leave with her servants. There is also a document that I want to finish during lunch, so it's best that I get back to it now. Before she left, she turned to Naruto and told him with a firm look, and Uzumaki-kun, weapons are prohibited here during school time, so please refrain yourself from summoning and pointing them at your fellow students. Of course, of course. The blonde grinned before he bowed his head to Sona, with Asia doing the same thing as she left the occult research club with her servants. It was after the four had left Rias decided to say to her two new servants while smiling. Naruto, Asia, try to get along with Saji-kun and Ise-kun. I know that Sona's pawn is an interesting individual, but you three are classmates who study under the same school and enjoy the same school life, so try to not fight him whenever he is at it, understand? I understand, Bucho-san. Asia replied with a nod. As long as he doesn't go anywhere near Asia, or try doing something funny, sure. Naruto nodded his head before he walked to his usual PC. Alright Asia, let's play some League. Yes, Naruto-san. Asia beamed brightly and took her seat beside him. It did not take it long for them to start queuing up, with Rias and Akino coming over to watch them play and Yumi sitting on the couch to enjoy some sweet desserts with Kaneko. Break. Alright. I got this. Naruto shouted and then ran to the other side of the pitch to catch the baseball ball with his gloved hand. Nice. Good work, Naruto. Rias shouted to him with a smile on her face and showed him a thumb as a sign of acknowledgement. The Occult Research Club was currently training for the upcoming ball tournament, starting out with baseball. Keep it up and we are going to win this whole tournament, said Rias with a firm voice. Everyone could see that she was in high spirit. Because what the clubs actually play would be announced on the day of the event, so in conclusion, they were practicing for team sports that were likely to arise. Batting practice is fine now. If it's baseball, then Kaneko will be our fourth batter. All right, the small girl with super strength nodded and replied shortly. No one was going to complain about that. Yufufu, it seems our Bucho is in high spirits, said Akino-san while giggling, coming to stand next to Naruto as he walked back to his position. I think she just hates to lose, that's all. Naruto answered with a shrug, having noticed her competitive nature. She had always had that burning look in her eyes whenever she was about to enter a competition. Of course, there's no way that we can lose unless we make a lot of mistakes. As devils who were fundamentally stronger than most humans, on the sports day they would have to hold back a lot, especially him and Kaneko, who were both physically much stronger than even normal devils. Naturally, they wouldn't have a hard match at all, but on the flip side, they had to learn the rules and features of the games they could be playing, and that had been the reason why Rias had taken them out to practice. The only one that should have the most problem in the physical department, of course, would be Asia. Even if your brain knows, your body has to as well. Rias declared before hit another ball that was tossed toward her by Yumi, who used her tail to do so, sending it into the air. Asia, you are on this time. Rias called to the blonde bishop, who became extremely nervous when she saw the ball flying toward her direction. Han. Aaauu. Ah. However, as everyone had expected, Asia was too slow, so the ball hit the ground and bounced for a few times before going through her legs. Needless to say, her sports sense was below average, and when combined with her clumsiness, Asia could even trip over nothing while playing sports. Asia, if you fail to catch it, go fetch it. Rias gave her order firmly. Why yes. She quickly ran after the ball and picked it up before tossing it over to Rias. Yuto, you are up next. Rias gave the order and hit the ball toward Kiba's direction. Yes, Bucho. Naturally, for the fastest runner and one with the best athletic skills of their group, Kiba was able to catch up to the ball fairly quickly and catch the ball in his gloved hand. Good work. By the way, Naruto-kun, did you know? Akino suddenly asked as Kiba threw Naruto the ball so he could return it to their master while looking at the blonde with a smile. Know what exactly? Recently, Bucho started a manual on love. Akino answered, smiling knowingly at him. A love manual. The blonde repeated in surprise. Does that mean she has found someone she likes? He couldn't help but ask, but it's only natural. It was something he should have expected, since Rias had been released from her marriage engagement with Razor, and from what he had been told her parents no longer had plans to pair her up with anyone, so she was now free to choose and to date whoever she wanted to be with. If that person was his master's decision, then he would wholeheartedly support her and him. Yufufu. Naruto-kun, you don't have to worry about it. It'll be all right. It's impossible for Bucho to have a lover while you're still around. Akino reassured him with a pat on his shoulder, making the blonde turn to her in confusion. Of Fufu, it's also her first time, so you'll be in trouble, Naruto-kun. What do you mean by that? You will see soon enough, Naruto-kun. Well, I guess I should return to my position now. Akino smiled at him before she left and returned to her spot on the other side of the field, leaving Naruto to stand there in confusion while scratching the back of his head. Okay. Let's continue, everyone. With that order from Rias, Naruto wasted no time to run back to his position. Break. Bang. Bang. The sound of the start of the infamous ball tournament echoed throughout the school. Naruto was currently doing some light exercise with Asia, but he couldn't help but notice that some dark clouds were approaching. He remembered the weather broadcast earlier that morning telling the audiences that it was going to rain in the evening, so the blonde seriously hoped that it wasn't going to rain until the tournament had finished, or else everyone would be very disappointed. There was a chance that they would also have to compete while it was raining. Tsukamoto-kun of the Manga Research Club, Hashioka-sensei is calling you. Please come to the staff room immediately. The PA speakers, which had been placed throughout the school, were making announcements endlessly. Because the club matches were at the end, they didn't have to worry about it till the end of the day. First, there were the matches between classes. His class was going to compete in football, but Naruto didn't get to participate, much to the disappointment of the girls who idolized him, more than half of the entire school, actually. It was mostly because his class had already had a football team, and they had been training with each other since the start of the school year, so him joining them would only hold them back. Kiba and Kaneko, meanwhile, would participate in their class matches, which was baseball and table tennis. Knowing Kiba, table tennis should not be something that could trouble him even if his opponent was going to be the representative of their school. After that there were matches amongst genders, and then after lunch, the club matches would start. Hey, we're back. After 10 minutes, the two great One-sama of Kuo Academy came back to them while smiling fearlessly. We have won this match already, Rias declared. So what game are we playing then? Naruto couldn't help but ask. Dodgeball. Line break. Kaichou-sama. Come on. You can do it. Beat Rias-senpai. Screamed Jinchurasagi as loudly as he possibly could, cheering for Sona Citri from behind the tennis court fence. She was the one who was representing the girls of her class to compete against other senior girls. She was holding her ground quite well in this tennis match, hitting the ball with amazing strength and flawless skills, but her opponent, Rias Gremory, was quite good as well. Rias-sama. Kaya. Around him, several fangirls were shouting in a shrill voice, while Issei Hayadu was waving a flag with the name tag of the student council on it. Although, everyone was still wondering how the hell a guy like him was able to get accepted into the student council, many had come to the conclusion that with him in the group, the strict Sona Citri could personally keep an eye on him, and made sure that he would cease committing lecherous behaviors. So far, it seemed to work out the way they had expected it to, but still didn't make them dislike him any less. It's so wonderful that we can see a match between high-class devils in a place like this, isn't it? Momo asked while enjoying the match beside Naruto, making him nod his head in agreement. Yeah, our masters are really giving it their all. Naruto nodded his head in agreement before he felt something cold pressing against his cheek, and turned his head to see Momo holding a bottle of energy drink. This is for you, she told him, and Naruto took the bottle from her with a wide grin. I know that you deserve a lot more, but please take it for now. It's a thank you gift. For what? The blonde couldn't help but ask. For saving Rias-senpai from her marriage engagement. Momo told him, I haven't had the chance to talk to you about your match against Razor Phoenix and his peerage, have I? Well, I watched the whole of it, rooting for you and everyone. I take that Razor's popularity with girls outside his peerage are negative. Naruto chuckled humorously as he opened the bottle of energy drink and drank some from it. Momo just shrugged as she replied to his statement, no one likes him, actually, even Sona Kaisho has opinions about men like him. He's very similar to her fiancé. Wait, Kaicho has a fiancé? Had, Naruto-kun. She broke off their engagement by beating him in a game of chess. My master doesn't want to marry someone who isn't smarter than her. Naruto made a face of amazement, but he wasn't surprised. Of course, someone who had never shown to take anything lightly, and appeared to be a very strict and intelligent young woman, would want to marry someone like that. From what I heard, her victory actually inspirited Rias-senpai to challenge her fiancé. Well, it worked out well for her, didn't it? Yes, thanks to you, Naruto-kun. Momo smiled before she looked away from him, blushing a little as she continued, you were pretty cool, you know, defeating the peerage of Razor Phoenix, and the king himself so swiftly and amazingly like that. I was in shock when you summoned Anivia, and especially Aurelian Soul. It was so scary, but amazing at the same time. Yeah, thanks, Momo-chan. The blonde could only respond like that while scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. Having Momo praising him feel very different from having his master Rias doing it. With Rias, it had been a sense of pride when she thanked him and everyone of her peerage for fighting for her freedom, which he guessed had been natural because she was his master, and they were her servants, but with Momo, he couldn't help but feel strangely nice and very happy. Must be because she was a servant of a high-class devil like him too. It must feel amazing for you to be able to summon the champions of your favorite game and fight alongside them. Momo then said, making Naruto grin in confirmation. He could still remember the joy of summoning his champions for the first time, and getting to know them on a personal level. So you can summon them anytime you want? Yeah. I even made Yumi my familiar. That cute magical cat flying on a book? Momo asked in surprise. She's my favorite champion. I am sure you can meet her later, if you want. Naruto grinned before he asked, you play League too? Yes, but I have only started playing recently. I see, so what is your main role? Support? ADC, actually. Momo answered with a smile. I am still learning the mechanics of the game though. There are so many things to learn and I don't even know where to start. Can you teach me how to play it properly later, Naruto-kun? The white-haired beauty asked, looking at Naruto hopefully. Oh well, I don't think I am the person for the job, but... The blonde added quickly when he saw her smile fall a little, puffing his chest out and smiling proudly. If you want, then I'd love to give you my knowledge of the game. I will look forward to it, Naruto-kun. With that said, the two then went back to watch the game between their masters, who had now started using trick shots infused with a little bit of magic to catch their opponent off guard. Take this. Shitori-style spin ball. The ball Sona had just hit went rushing towards Bucho, spinning rapidly in the air. You are too naive. Grammary-style counter. Rias shouted as she hit it back with her racket, but the ball changed its direction the moment it touched the court for the first time and went down, causing Rias to miss. 15-30. No, it is Kaishu's point. The girls, who were cheering for Rias, cried in disappointment. You are doing well, Sona. To be expected from my rival. Rias admitted with a smirk, gripping the racket's handle tightly in her hand. Ufufu. Rias, you haven't forgotten the promise where the loser has to pay for the udon with all the toppings at Kobushia, have you? Sona asked, smiling slightly. Yes, I haven't. It will be my shame if you taste that before me. Rias grinned and got into position. That's why I will definitely win. Did you know that I have 108 styles of magic ball? I will accept that challenge. I will hit back all the balls that come into my Shitori zone. In the end, the final match between Rias Grammary and Sona Citri lasted so long and went so hard that both of their rackets broke and they both got first places. Of course, normal rackets would break if they were used for intense rallies like that. Everyone, including the referee, had decided that it was a tie, but Rias wanted to win at all costs, so the participants turned to the spectators to ask who the winner was. Sona had a lot of votes, but Occult Research Club still won in the end because they had more famous members in the group and many more fans. Line break. After lunch break, it was time for their match against the baseball club. Come on, you guys need to do better than that. Naruto taunted as he dodged a ball coming at him with minimum effort, before he jumped in front of Asia to catch the ball being thrown at her and sent it back to one of their opponents, striking him in the head and knocking him down to eliminate him from the match instantly. It actually wasn't that hard for him to catch the ball, and even Asia could do it too if she had had a bit more confidence, because the opponents were throwing it half-heartedly with barely any strength. It was simply because they couldn't hit anyone from the Occult Research Club. Rias Grammary, one of the two great Onisama of Kuo Academy. The most popular school idol. You couldn't aim for her. Akino, another girl that was hailed as Great Onisama, the second most popular school idol, you couldn't aim for her as well. Asia, the innocent angel and the second most beautiful girls of the second year. She was also a blondie. Couldn't aim for her either. Kaneko, a lowly girl who was their school's mascot, you'd feel bad if you hit her. Kiba Yuto, enemy of every male student in the school, but the girls would hate you if you hit him. A target you absolutely must not hit. And last but not least, Naruto Uzumaki himself, the school delinquent who randomly skipped school whenever he felt like it, though his bad boy attitude wasn't actually that bad when you got to know him better, and he was actually quite a nice guy. The girls loved him, so if you aimed for him then the girls would end up hating you for sure. Not to mention that he could easily beat you up later if the rumors about him being a Yakuza was true. There was no way anyone could win against a team like that. Shit. I don't care if I'm hated. You damn perfect. I'm sorry to disturb, Naruto, but can I have a word with you? Whoa Sona, I don't think now is a good time to. Hearing Sona's voice, Naruto answered her without noticing a ball flying toward his direction, as one of the members of the baseball club had had enough of handsome guys and decided to strike down the one with the worst reputations at school. Now, while he could react to it and catch the ball with his superhuman speed, doing so from his current position and posture would only show that he wasn't human, but he just couldn't let it hit him and get eliminated from the game so early either. Fortunately enough, before the blonde could finish deciding the second best option, Kiba had jumped in front of him and caught the ball in his hands. Keep your head in the game, Naruto-kun. The smiling knight told Naruto as he landed on the floor with a flip, causing the girls watching the game to squeal and cheer in excitement before he threw the ball at the baseball club's member, striking him down and eliminating him from the game. Nice save, Kiba. Naruto grinned and nodded his head gratefully at the reliable Kiba Yuto before looking at his master and telling her what's going on by pointing a finger at his champion watch he wore around his left wrist. Rias nodded her head in understanding and gave her club the order to finish the game as quickly as they possibly could. To say it was a dominating victory would be a huge understatement. After the match was over, Rias left with Akino to receive their rewards for winning. Kiba and Kaneko then went back to their classes to celebrate with their classmates, leaving Naruto and Asia behind to rest for a bit before heading home. Finding a spot on the bench outside of the old school building, Naruto then took out his phone so he could pretend that he was answering a call just in case someone saw him and mistook him talking to himself. Sorry about that, Sona. So, what's up? Naruto asked as he answered the Maven of the Strings through the telepathic link between them. It's not a problem at all, Naruto. It's just that I would like to talk to you about your offer, that's all. Have you come to a decision? He couldn't help but ask, smiling a little. Yes, with how Demacia has been recently, your offer isn't something I can easily turn down. The Institute has also given me the permission as long as I answer the League's summon whenever there's a summoner request for my powers, so I can move to your world and stay with you how I want. That's so good to hear, Sona. The blonde exclaimed excitedly before he decided to tell her, although I have to warn you, my home has run out of spare room so you will have to stay with Asia for a few days. Don't worry, Naruto. I don't mind sharing a room with your friend. If anything, I am actually very grateful that she is willing to share a room with me. Well, I am sure you can thank Asia later. Naruto grinned before he told her, so I think it's best that you start packing. I will summon you as soon as I'm done here. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Naruto. You have no idea how much this means to me. Please don't mention it. Naruto shook his head, and then said with a small smile, offering a safe home so you can rest peacefully at night is the least that I can do to help you guys out. It's not that big of a deal to me anyway. Also, if you ever need anything please feel free to ask me, and I will see what I can do to help you out. I will keep that in mind, Naruto. See you later. See you later, Sona. It was really just another kinda boring, but typical and peaceful week at Koa Academy. But this would be the last peaceful week that he had for a very, very long time. Chapter 13. Putting his hand on the floor of the living room of his house, Naruto gathered his demonic power and activated his sacred gear. In a flash of light, Sona, the Maven of the Strings and one of the first champions of the League of Legends, appeared before him and his housemates with two large suitcases at her sides, looking as radiant and breathtakingly beautiful as he remembered. Her outfit consisted of a beautiful white dress that stopped just below the middle portions of her toned, shapely thighs, giving a generous view to long sexy legs, and showed off her incredibly voluptuous figure, the like of which could rival even that of his master. As usual, she had her long flowing blue hair tied into twintails, but with a pair of blue ribbons instead of hair ornaments. "Greeting, Summoner." Sona spoke through the telepathic link as she lowered her head to Naruto with her hands clapping in front of her thighs. "Please raise your head. There's no need for you to bow to me, Sona." Naruto shook his head and said as he stood up to face her with a large grin on his face. Once she had raised her hand, the blonde then turned to Rias and Asia, who were both smiling at the blue-haired champion. "Allow me to introduce you to my master, Rias Gremory, and one of my best friends, Asia Argento." "Bucho, Asia, I believe that you know very well who this is." "It's a pleasure to meet you in person, Sona," Rias said as she offered the young woman sharing the same name with her childhood friend and rival her hand, allowing her to take it so they could shake hands with each other. Sona smiled before she lowered her head a little to Rias, and the crimson-haired heiress responded with another friendly smile, remembering very clearly that Sona was mute and the only one who could hear her magic voice was her summoner. "Hello, Sona-san." Asia followed Rias' example and greeted Sona cheerfully as the maven turned to offer the blonde a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Asia." Sona then turned back to her summoner and requested him politely. "Naruto, can you tell her how grateful I am that she lets me stay with her in her room for the time being?" Naruto did not need to hear the whole sentence to know what Sona wanted him to tell Asia for her, but he let her finish it anyway before saying, with hand reaching up to scratch the back of his head as he told her. "Oh yeah, about that Sona." The maven just tilted her head to the side in mild confusion. "I don't think you will need to share a room with Asia anymore, unless of course you prefer to have a roommate. You can choose and have your own room now, I think." He then put a hand on his hips and turned his head up to look at his new house. Key words, new house. Rias had told him a few days ago that his house would be renovated soon by the devils of her family, allowing him to carry out his plan of letting some of his champions live with him. It's just that he didn't expect it to become a full-on 6-story building that was literally a mansion in less than a day, because Naruto remembered when he left his home that morning with Rias and Asia for the ball tournament it was still a normal 2-story terrace house that was pretty decent for a family of 3. But he wasn't complaining though. With how many spare rooms he had seen so far, he could house as many champions as he wanted. Sona could have any room she wanted, and set it up however she would want it to be. However, the new house wasn't the only thing that finally came into his life today. It came with an extra. "Naruto-sama, Oju-sama, Asia-san, dinner is ready," informed a beautiful silver-haired maid from the new dining room. "Oh, you must be Sona. Pleased to meet you. I'm Graffia Moving In, the maid of this residence." She walked out and lowered her head to Sona, who smiled and lowered her head in response to Graffia. Naruto remembered that the Buval, the Dalmatian family who adopted her when she was young, was a very wealthy one, so Sona must be no stranger to maids. "Allow me to help you settle in, Sona-san, and then you can join the others for dinner." With that said, the silver-haired woman walked towards Sona, who lowered her head gratefully to the older woman before she turned her attention over to Naruto, opening her suitcase with a wave of her hand before lowering herself down to pick up a very large book, the size of a telephone directory, with glowing markings and a symbol of a building with 3 shining crystals on the front cover. "This book is for you, Naruto." "Whoa, what is it?" He couldn't help but ask as he accepted the book from Sona, sounding a little excited because he could recognize the symbol on the cover to be the crest of the Institute of War, the organization of summoners of Runeterra, of the League of Legends themselves. "The Book of Summoner? Very straightforward, isn't it? A scholar at the Institute asked me to give it to you. It contains everything you need to become a full-fledged summoner like those at the Institute." Naruto Wolf whistled in amazement and opened the cover to read the first page of the book, finding the historical contents inside written in Japanese. "What language is that?" Rias asked in amazement, making Naruto turn his head and look at her in surprise. As if she could read his mind, Sona answered the question in his head. "I was told the book was written in a magical runic language that would translate itself only to those we champions acknowledged as our summoners." Even one of us is enough, but because of it others can't read it, and will only see the words inside as what they are. I see. Interesting stuff. Naruto nodded his head in understanding before he told Rias everything Sona just said to him, making his master nod her head in understanding. After that, Graffia took Sona to her room and helped her settle in, giving Naruto some time to read the Book of Summoner before they all went to the dining room to enjoy dinner with his parents, with Sona being introduced to them as a distant relative of Rias who came to Japan to study music. Of course, they were both more than happy to let another beautiful foreign girl stay with their son in their home, nothing out of the ordinary at all, in all honesty. So for the next few days, Naruto's life fell into a slow, somewhat difficult, but nonetheless satisfying routine. He would go to Koe Academy at day, studying like a normal high school student for once, and worked as a devil at night. He played League with Asia and Rias whenever he had time to spare, climbing to Silver Eye in just a few days and looking forward to promoting himself to Gold Division before the end of the week. Now that his house had been renovated, having 3 basements in total with one of them being a training area, Naruto no longer had to go to that riverbank near school. He could now train with the masters of Runeterra whenever he wanted, without needing to worry about collateral damages or being seen by normal humans. Naruto even had Heimerdinger set up the place with drones, robots and turrets armed to the teeth with Runeterra's most advanced weaponry for real and challenging combat experiences, giving him the chance to prepare for literally anything. In contrary to what Naruto had imagined, having Graffia as his supervisor, the head maid of the Gremory Devil household didn't take much time to show herself as a great friend as well as an older sister of sort to everyone in the house, even his parents, taking care of the residents and doing most of the housework. Naruto knew that since the moment Graffia moved into this house she had been keeping a close eye on him and his growth, but she had done so expertly and never actually made him feel uncomfortable about it. Graffia even helped him train to become a stronger devil, teaching him many useful fighting techniques, magic, and also giving him advice on how to properly control his constantly growing demonic power reserve. Reading the Book of Summoner gave Naruto the basic idea of what it meant to be a summoner of the League of Legends. The first 2 chapters of the book summarized the entire history of the League of Legends, going all the way back to its foundation 22 years after the Fifth Rune War, to serve both as a political mediator as well as a dispute settlement organization in order to prevent the onset of a 6th war that would finish obliterating Runeterra. Naruto had spent a whole night reading and endorsing himself in the stories of those 2 chapters. However, things got even more exciting from the 3rd chapter, which showcased the magic that was used to call forth their chosen champions onto the fields of justice. From reading its description and after a number of experiments with Heimerdinger, the 2 of them had come to realize that his Sacred Gear's summoning ability actually acted as a magical waypoint between him, Earth, Runeterra, and the League of Legends, making his ability to summon actually not normal summoning, at least, not in the same way the Institute's summoners used their magic. Whenever Naruto summoned his champions, he actually opened the gateway for them to go through, with different champions requiring different but fixed amounts of demonic power. It also explained why Sona could stay in his world for as long as she wished with him not having to constantly expend his magical power to keep her in his world. It was also worth noting that whenever he summoned the weapons of the League's champions, he was actually summoning perfect copies of them using another ability of his Sacred Gear, but he could only do so if the weapons themselves were still in Runeterra. Anything that was taken to Earth when he summoned the champions could not be replicated, because Runeterra Arsenal no longer had the data of said weapons at that point, as the Yordle professor had put it. Nevertheless, although he would always prefer his ability because the procedure and preparation was far less complicated and much easier for him to use, the summoning spell wasn't the only thing that Naruto would love to learn and try out later. In the following chapters, the blonde was able to find a number of spells and magic that he believed could be used alongside his Sacred Gear, just like how the Institute's members utilized them alongside the main summoning magic to bring forth their champions. The book made him realize that he had only been summoning his champions as they were, not how they were supposed to be when representing their summoners, so if he could do it then he would be able to make use of the full powers of his Sacred Gear, whose powers were still a mystery to him even after getting the help of a smart mind like Heimerdinger. Only time would tell what else could he do. Naruto, what would you like for lunch? A soft voice broke Naruto out of his train of thoughts, and the blonde found himself looking at the beautiful smiling face of his new housemate and champion Sona, who stood facing him in a supermarket, showing the blonde cases of pork chops and slices of tuna. Pork or fish? Let's go with the pork. We can make some ramen with them. Naruto said, standing straight up with his hand holding the handlebar of the almost fully filled shopping cart he had been pushing behind Sona while escorting her. The maven of the strings had decided earlier that day that she would be cooking lunch for everyone at home, to return the kindness they had shown her since the moment she moved in to live with them. With Graffia being the only one who could win an argument with Sona, his mother had had no choice but to allow her to do what she wanted before she dragged Naruto, who had been in the new gaming room playing League, out and told him to escort Sona to the local supermarket, not wanting to let the girl go alone while her son was at home playing video game all day. Ramen? You don't know what it is? He couldn't help but ask. I know what it is, Naruto. The blue-haired young woman gave him a playful glare. Though they don't eat ramen in Dalmatia, I have seen champions from Ionia have it during their meal times at the institute. Oh yeah, Akali's favorite food is ramen, isn't it? Naruto asked, but Sona just answered him with a smile and a shrug of her shoulder, probably because she didn't know the rogue assassin that well. After Sona had chosen 3 cases of pork chops into the cart, the two then went on to buy some fresh vegetables. She seemed to have noticed he ate very little vegetables during meal times, because she then went on to explain to him how good then would be for his health for the entire duration of the selection. As expected of a high-class and noble lady from Dalmatia, one that had never been shy to express her feelings. So Sona, does Dalmatia have Naruto-kun? Hey Naruto-kun. Before he could finish his question, Naruto heard a familiar voice and turned his head around to see Momo Hanakai pushing her cart toward him while waving her hand around in the air. The white-haired young woman wasn't wearing her school uniform today. Her outfit consisted of a buttoned-up shirt and black skirt that stopped a little above her knees, with black and white socks and matching colored sneakers. In fact, this was probably the first time Naruto had seen Momo in casual clothing, and he had to admit that she looked amazing. Ah, Momo-chan. Good morning. Naruto greeted her brightly with his trademark grin as she came to stand next to him. Good morning to you too, Naruto-kun. I didn't think that I would. She then looked over to Sona when she realized that Naruto was with her, having an expression as she tried to recognize the tall blue-haired girl. She could swear that she had seen her somewhere before, but just couldn't place her fingers around it. So she decided to ask, and who is this? Naruto-kun, you are not on a date with her or anything like that, aren't you? She asked, coming to a conclusion almost instantly while looking a little horrified. Date. Naruto repeated, making a funny face before quickly defending himself. No, I'm taking Sona out shopping for lunch, that's all. Sona? Momo then widened her eyes in realization. She could only think of one other person with the name Sona who shared the facial features with the young woman she was looking at. Is this that Sona? The one from League of Legends? Yup. Sona, meet Momo Hanakai. She's a friend of mine at Koa Academy, the school that I go to. Naruto finally decided to introduce the two, making Sona smile and shake hand with the other girl. Naruto really couldn't blame her for not being able to recognize Sona sooner, since she had her hair down from their usual twintails to avoid being mistaken as a cosplayer. Her beauty and voluptuous figure were both already attention-drawing enough. I will go over there to grab some onions. You stay here and talk to the girl, Naruto. With a playful smile, Sona walked away with Naruto wondering the reason why she suddenly decided to go off on her own, leaving him behind with Momo, who stared at him for a moment before asking, breaking the silence between them. You can talk to her, can't you? Naruto nodded his head and explained with a grin, yep, it's called telepathic link or something like that. Other summoners of the league need to cast a spell to create it with their champions, but because of my sacred gear it comes to me naturally. Good to know that you are having a great time with your champions, Naruto-kun. Momo smiled at him as she leaned a bit to the side to look at Sona, who was carefully picking a handful of onions from a basket. Can't believe that I couldn't recognize her sooner, she. Before she could finish her sentence, a melodic ringtone was heard and Momo reached into the pocket of her skirt to pull out a phone in a white case, which she then pointed at while looking at him before moving it over to her ear, making Naruto nod his head in understanding. Excuse me for a second, Naruto-kun. Yes, Tsubaki-senpai. The vice president of the student council seemed to go straight to the point, because it didn't take long for the blonde to see his friend widening her eyes in surprise. Break. The next day, Naruto found himself sitting on the chair by the window of the Occult Research Club's clubroom after school with the other members of the club, with the additions of Tsubaki Shinra, who had come with Sona to the meeting, being her queen and most trusted servant. Yumi was napping peacefully on his lap with book hovering a little behind him, and a nervous Asia sitting a little behind him on his right. He couldn't blame her though for feeling so anxious, but Asia wasn't the one he was worrying about the most at the moment. It was Kiba, who had a dangerous look on his face as he sat alone in a corner of the room, looking like he was about to go in and cut the guests down at any moment. On the sofa before them, Rias and Sona were facing the two guests. The first of them was a young woman with chin-length blue hair, with a dyed green fringe on the right side and brown eyes. Her attire consisted of a black, skin-tight, short-sleeve leotard with pauldrons, matching fingerless gloves that extended to her biceps, and thigh-high boots, all of which were adorned with straps. It was worn under a white hooded cloak with gold and blue accents, and finished with a crucifix around her neck. The second was also a young woman with violet eyes, wearing the same attire as her blue-haired friend with some minor differences. She had long chestnut hair that was tied into twin tails, each held with a blue ribbon. It appeared that one of them was Issei Hayadu's childhood friend, and decided to come visit him yesterday before requesting for this meeting with the two devils in charge of Kuo Town. From what Sona had informed them, the two exorcists gave Issei quite a startle, which was the reason why he had called Tsubaki, and in turn the vice president of the student council had contacted the other members of Sona's peerage to tell them what happened, leading Naruto to know about their arrival before his master was able to tell him about it. As I have already informed Sona Citri this morning, recently the Excaliburs holy swords that were held by the Vatican headquarters, Catholic Church, Protestant Church and Eastern Orthodox Church were stolen. Rias didn't show how surprised she was to hear this, and instead chose to think the situation over. Beside her, Sona also had a calm expression as she spoke up. I assume that you have discovered the one responsible and managed to track them down to this location. Ravel determined. Rias had also come to this conclusion. Did the church send you to her to retrieve the stolen Excaliburs? That is correct. The blue-haired exorcist nodded her head in confirmation. Irina and I, Zenobia, were sent by the Vatican to retrieve the stolen fragments. Akino-san, there are more than one Excalibur? Naruto couldn't help but ask, leaning over to Akino who said next to him to ask. That's right, Naruto-kun. Akino nodded before explaining. A very long time ago in the past, indeed there was only one Excalibur, but sometime during the war between the three factions, Excalibur was broken. The fragments were then collected and reforged into 7 pieces by the church. Yes, that is correct. Irina Shido, the one that seemed to be Issei Hayadu's childhood friend, heard Akino's explanation and replied to them. Excalibur broke and was reforged by our alchemist. However, our alchemy wasn't able to reform Excalibur completely, so they had to split it into 7 different swords. This is my Excalibur. The cloak opened as Irina moved her right arm and grabbed a small string tied around it. The string lengthened and wiggled as if it was alive, and then it changed shape, straightening and solidifying before eventually morphing into a long katana. Asia instantly grabbed Naruto's hand, and the blonde wasn't hesitant to squeeze back, because the sword's radiating holy aura was extremely terrifying. The moment Naruto looked at the sword, he could feel a cold feeling running down his spine. If this was only a fragment of the holy sword Excalibur, then he could only guess how powerful the true one was. This is Excalibur Mimic. Irina explained. It has the ability to change shape into anything I want it to, so it's really easy to carry it around. Unlike Zenobia, I can just carry it like this. The sword changed back into a string, which Irina then tied around her arm again. You shouldn't give away your Excalibur's power to a bunch of devils, Irina, Zenobia scolded her companion, only to soon realize that everyone was giving her expectant looks, including Irina. She sighed. I guess it can't be helped. This is my Excalibur. With that said, the young woman unwrapped her weapon, revealing what appeared to be a giant sword. Naruto could tell instantly just from the feelings he was having that this sword was so much more dangerous than Excalibur Mimic. It's called Excalibur Destruction. It was one of the two Excaliburs in possession of the Catholic Church. The Protestant Church and Eastern Orthodox Church also had two Excaliburs in their possession. There was a seventh Excalibur, but it was lost sometime after the war. Zenobia rewrapped the sword in its cloth, and Naruto could see the glowing symbols on the fabric. Since he had started learning runic magic from the Book of Summoner and a few others that Graffia had graciously enough to find for him, he could tell the runes were used to seal away its holy power, keeping devils from being affected by it, or others from sensing it. And you believe the three Excaliburs that were stolen are currently somewhere in Kuo? Rias stated. That is correct. We have managed to track the location of the people who stole the Excaliburs to this location. It seems that our territory is full of incidents like this lately. The Crimson Heiress continued as she looked over to her childhood friend, who shared the same responsibility as she did regarding Kuo Town. Do you know who stole the holy swords from you? We have reason to believe that they were stolen by members of the Grigori. So the Excaliburs were stolen by the Fallen Angels organization. Sona concluded as she tilted her glasses up. It seems like their members have been causing all kinds of problems recently, but it does sound like definitely something they would do. Devils aren't really interested in holy swords, since their very power can cause serious harm to us, but the fallen angels, yes, I'm sure they'd love to get their hands on something like that. We already have a suspect who we believe is the main culprit behind the thefts. One of the Grigori leaders, Kokobile. I see. Rias nodded her head slowly before saying so. The theft was done by Kokobile, one of the leaders of the Grigori, and a survivor of the Great War between the three factions. I suppose it only makes sense that someone like him would be behind the thefts. I really didn't expect to hear a name from the Bible in a situation like this. Indeed. Only someone like Kokobile has the capability to do something like that. Irina said the moment the swords were stolen, we have sent several exorcists here in secret to uncover his location, but they kept getting killed. Rias and Sona both glared at them, looking as if they were offended. Exorcists were being sent into their territory, and the two didn't know anything about it until now. The heiress of the Citri was able to keep her cool, while her friend could do it too, albeit with some difficulties, since she was the one who had a shorter temper between the two of them. And what is it you want from us, the devils of this town? Are you here to request our assistance in this mission of yours? Zenobia raised an eyebrow at Ria's question. Simple? Nothing. We want nothing from you. Our request no, our demand is that you stay out of our affairs. The blue-haired girl said firmly. This situation is between us and the fallen angels. We do not want you to go out meddling with our business. You must be awfully worried if you're coming here and trying to make demands of us. Instead of being angered by it, Ria said with a small smirk on her face, are you worried that one of us, or ever worse, everyone here might choose to side with the fallen angels, our more dangerous enemy? Or perhaps you're even thinking that we might already be in collaboration with those fallen angels? Zenobia, who had a firm look in her eyes, nodded her head in confirmation fearlessly. From a tactical point of view, it's not impossible. Our superiors don't trust devils and fallen angels. If holy swords were taken away from the side of God, then the devils would be pleased, correct? Fallen angels will also profit from this. For these reasons, it will not be strange for them to form an alliance with you. That is why we are giving you a warning. If you form an alliance with Kokobile, the leader of the fallen angels, then we will eliminate you all. Even though you two are both the Mao's little sisters, according to our boss. If you know that, then it means that you have many connections with the superiors of the church. Sona then paused for a second before stating firmly, so allow me to say this, on the behalf of my friend here, who is a high-class devil of the Gremory Devil House, sister of Sirs Lucifer, and her servants as well as mine, we will not form an alliance with the fallen angels, never. We will not do anything that will tarnish our leaders' names. Zenobia nodded in satisfaction. It seemed that she was convinced, listening to what is good enough. Though, I have to warn you just in case Cocobile is hiding in the town with 3 Excaliburs himself. Don't worry, we can take care of ourselves. Rias said firmly. Now then, you mentioned each church still having 3 Excaliburs, yet I only see 2 with you. May I ask where that person is? They have that person on hold for this case. Yes, they are planning to protect the last Excalibur if Irina and I fail. Zenobia nodded her head in confirmation at her companion's work. So, it's just the 2 of you? Sona asked in an astonished voice, raising an eyebrow behind her glasses. Do you want to retrieve the Excaliburs from the one of the most cruel leaders of the fallen angels, of all people, with just 2 of you? Don't you think it is a bit unwise? Are you trying to die? Yes. I have the same opinion as Irina, but if it is possible, I don't want to die. Irina said with an innocent smile. So, your belief in his doctrine is extreme as always. Rias let out a sigh before making that comment, making Zenobia glare at her. Don't speak ill of our beliefs, Rias Gremory. Zenobia stated firmly, our minimum goal is to get the Excaliburs of the fallen angels. To achieve this, it is all right for us to die. The only way to fight Excaliburs is with other Excaliburs. And will that be possible with just 2 of you? Well, we are not going to die in vain. Irina answered Sona's question fearlessly. You 2 look confident. Do you have a secret weapon that we don't know about? Perhaps, but we'll leave that to your imagination. After that, the 2 parties just looked at each other and the conversation finally stopped. Irina and Zenobia then looked at each other, and then stood up. So, excuse us now. I believe it's time for us to leave. So, you aren't going to use the tea? I can have my queen prepared some snacks for you as well, you know. Rias told them, but Zenobia refused her offer with a hand. Sorry, but I do not need it. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. See you. Irina apologized while waving at them with a hand before she turned around to leave with her companion. Before the 2 of them could leave through the door, however, they both stopped and turned to look in the same direction, the direction of Asia. When I came into this room, I had a thought that it might be. Zenobia began. Are you the witch Asia Argento? In all honesty, I never expected to find you in a place like this. Asia trembled at that, and Naruto couldn't stop himself from glaring at the blue-haired exorcist. That word was very painful for Asia. Irina noticed this and kept looking at Asia. Eh? You're the former holy maiden? The one who says they have the power that can also heal devils and fallen angels, right? I heard that you were sent somewhere after being exiled, but I never thought that you had become a devil. Asia did not know how to react to Irina and Zenobia, so Naruto decided to step in at that moment, handing Yumi gently over to Kaneko. What about it then? Naruto asked in a cold tone, turning everyone's attention to him. Are you going to tell your superiors about her decisions? Oh, no, of course not. Zenobia shook her head in denial before saying, I am not going to tell my superiors that I saw her here, being a devil. There are a lot of people who still believe in the Holy Maiden Asia. I don't want them to end up shocked. Though, I want to ask her if she still believes in our God. Even Irina had a surprised face at that. Zenobia. There is no way that she, who has become a devil, still believes in God. No, Irina. I can smell the belief in her. Zenobia turned to her companion and explained in a calm tone, it can be an abstract way of saying it, but I am sensitive to these kinds of things. There are people who betray the teachings and still feel at fault because they cannot forget the teachings. I can feel something similar coming from her. The blue-haired exorcist finished with sharp eyes, and Irina looked at Asia even more with interested eyes. Is that true, Asia-san? Do you still believe in God, even though you have turned into a devil? From behind Naruto, Asia answered that question with a sad expression. I just can't put it aside. I believed in him all my life. Then that's it. You must be cut off by us right now. If it is now, I can cut you in the name of God. Even if you have any sin, our God will forgive you. Hearing this, Zenobia took the sword from the cloth and pointed it at Asia. Naruto, whose blood had been boiling for the past few seconds, couldn't stand still anymore. In an instant, he summoned Yon's Azakana demon blade and used it to counter Zenobia's Excalibur destruction, at the same time unleashing its overwhelming demonic aura to counter the sword's holy power. Don't touch her, he said in a low tone, but everyone could feel the burning anger behind it. You two, seriously. I know your belief in your teaching is extreme, but don't you dare think that you can just come in here and threaten my servants like that. Rias stood up from her seat and glared heatedly at the two exorcists, Zenobia specifically because she was the one who had directly threatened to kill Asia, who now stood behind Naruto and the rest of her peerage, as they formed a protective line in front of her. Naruto was still glaring daggerly at Zenobia, and the girl did the same right back at him, and the others fearlessly, but only for a second, as her eyes started to widen with an expression of shock. Naruto, seeing an opening, used that opportunity to knock her sword back, stopping her from pointing it at Asia, before pushing forward. But before he could advance anywhere, his face came into contact with a very familiar barrier, one that was created by his familiar Yumi. Naruto. Yumi addressed him worriedly with a paw raising in front of her. What? Naruto asked in confusion, looking at the cat floating in the air above Kaniko's head. Lower your shield, Yumi. He told her, before finally noticing that everyone in the room was looking at him with the same expression Yumi and Zenobia were having. What's wrong, YR? He then looked at the mirror on the wall not too far from him and finally saw it, himself, looking right back at him with glowing yellow eyes, and something akin to solidified mist-like shadow coming from his whole body. Wah! The blonde dropped his sword and uttered in confusion. He finally felt it. It was that feeling. Just like that night. But for some reason, he felt fine. Normal. And so, for the first time in a very long time, the blonde opened a telepathic link that he had shut off completely and thought that he would never have to open again, at least, in the near future. Evelyn, are you doing this? Naruto asked as he looked down at his hand, and saw his fingernails lengthening. At the same time, even more shadow was coming out of him, from everywhere around his body. Doing what? He could hear the demon's seductive voice from the back of his head. Sorry Han, but let's talk later. I am a little bit busy at. Wait, what are you doing? What do you mean? You are taking my power. Wait, so you are not doing this? Naruto asked in confusion, before he looked up to see both Rias and Sona looking cautiously at him with their hands raised. Wait, Bucho, Sona Kaishu, I'm still myself. This is a bit weird, but I don't think I am being controlled by Evelyn or anything like that. He told them quickly before any of them could act, making Rias lower her hand, but Sona didn't look convinced, so she and Tsubaki kept their guards on. To be fair, this was their first time seeing Naruto with Evelyn's power, and the menacing feeling the darkness that had formed around was giving off wasn't really helping. Are you sure, Naruto? You look just like that night. Rias asked as she approached him carefully. Yeah, I am sure. Naruto said as he looked at his hands, trying to stop the shadow from coming out of them. Just like what he had thought. Only time would tell what else could he do. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.